Welcome back to Meaningful Interviews with Rabbi C Dalfin, your host. I'm here with Rabbi Dr. Alan Nadler of Montreal currently, whose article appeared in a new book that was published in conjunction with Gimel Tammuz, the Rebbe's 30th yahrzeit, called The Oracle, Portraits of the Rebbe, and has caused a storm amongst some Lubavitchers, and especially shluchim, emissaries of the Rebbe, in which they feel uncomfortable distributing the book and therefore hurting sales, of course, for the two co-authors, David Zakukowski and Marc Asnin, primarily because of Alan's article. And we discussed in the first interview, and I thought, Alan, you explained it well, and in which I said on the first interview, I reread it again, and my animosity and the words that I used that you quoted, which are correct. I said you're a terrible person, and I said you're a Rebbe hater, and I asked for mechila, forgiveness, and you said clearly that you're meichel me, and there's no shum zichron, no shum trace of ill feelings. Nevertheless, we had a great discussion in our first interview about some of your views, some of your articles, and now I want to continue. But before that, I want to share with you, Alan, since I told you I'm an insider, the two people that called for the burning of the books, and then one of them even said the burning of Alan Nadler, which he later wrote in a WhatsApp Hebrew note, because he's from Eretz Yisrael, Rabbi Greenberg out of Alaska, the head shliach. He said, "Oh, he didn't mean that," and I believe he didn't mean to burn Alan Nadler, but definitely very inciting and wrong. You have to know. I don't know about Beijing, but the shliach there, Rabbi Freundlich, but Rabbi Greenberg is known for his radical positions. He speaks about it publicly and has a big influence over a certain segment of the youth. And his radical positions are known, anyone that follows the Chabad world. So it is unacceptable, and I've said it, and I'll say it again, and I like Rabbi Greenberg, and I respect his work, but to call for the burning of a book and to call for the burning of a person is wrong. And okay, so you didn't mean burn Alan Nadler. Okay, fine. It's like me saying Alan Nadler is a Rebbe hater, but you don't say that. And number two, the burning of a book. Since when we burn books? What is going on here? The Rebbe is looking down from on heaven and is very upset about his Hasidim speaking this way. You can disagree, agree to disagree. You don't want to buy the book. You don't want to distribute it to your balabatim, to your congregants and lay people. No problem. But I just want you to know, Alan, personally, that I'm on the same page as far as those two issues. You want to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I want to just respond to exactly what you just said. First of all, about Rabbi Greenberg, as you yourself just said, he has a lot of influence, your words. He has a big influence on a lot of young Chabadniks. And it is people who have an influence who have to be especially careful about how young, impressionable, sometimes not all, a lot of people who turn, and there's not a critique, a lot of people who turn to religion in general, especially to enthusiastic, mystical religious groups, are people who may have emotional challenges, who are, I don't say that in a demeaning way. There's something very honorable about dealing with your emotional challenges and seeking spirituality, but these are people who can be unstable. Balei Tshuva, as we know, are more passionate and more zealous than others, and especially, and this is not unconnected with Messianism, if someone comes and says, this is your Messiah, I'm bringing you salvation. We know what happened in the history of the church, so Messianism is still connected with this, because once you believe you have the Mashiach, No one could say anything. And that's censorship. Who censored books? Christianity. Who burnt books? Christians. So we don't want to become like them. We don't want to come. And so that's part of my concern about Messianism. But getting back to Rabbi Greenberg, he didn't retract his statement. In some ways, he actually doubled down. I read what he wrote. It's written in rabbinic Hebrew, and he talks about all kinds of irrelevant things like, esrogim from Corfu. And the guy, I mean, to me, he also needs help because he doesn't write in a rational. But what he said was he didn't really. He said, well, that's what I said, burn him. But, that's a lashon, that's a language that is used when it comes to machine-baked matzahs and esrogim. And, most people wouldn't be able to read, even a lot of rabbis wouldn't be able to read and decipher that language because it's not just rabbinic language, it's insider talk. Okay, but I follow you guys. You're an insider.
It's Hasidic locker room talk.
Yes, exactly. Sod Hashem li'reav, right? This is their secret there. But what he did say was they're just he turned it into an accusation against him. In other words, they're inventing this, pretending that I said burn him. So he didn't own up to it. He didn't own up to it. When you say something and people say, hey, you shouldn't have said that, the answer is not I'm not expecting an apology, but a full retraction. That was not a retraction. Forgive me. I've retracted things in the past in writing things where there was a mistake. When you make a mistake, you retract it. You don't say, oh, others are attributing to me something I never said. He said it. I mean, that's his words. When you say, and you have a big influence on young people who are finding Yiddishkeit, I mean, it's not something you want to say because all it takes is one person, one Michiganer. So he didn't mean it literally, but he said it literally, and he didn't say you have to burn Nadler, but not really in parentheses. He just said it, and it was out there. So once it's out there, in this age of social media, you put things out, it goes viral, whatever happens, it's no longer in your hands, and you have to own it. You have to own it, and he didn't own it. I welcome him to own it and saying, I made a mistake. But maybe he thinks he's fallible too. I don't know.
Well, in continuing this discussion on this point, just briefly, I called for in my interviews with Marc Asnin, I called for leadership, whatever leadership is and whoever it is, of Chabad to denounce his statement. I mean, he is an important piece of a puzzle in the Chabad Shlichus Shluchim world, and he's done fantastic things and continues. And if he's not going to own it, then leadership should, and regardless, leadership should. I mean, the rabbi from Beijing and the rabbi from Alaska, these are two prominent people. And I'm going to get slapped for this, and I don't care because I'm with the Rebbe and Hasidim. I know what the Rebbe and Hasidim and the real shluchim would never ever say such a thing, think this way, and would apologize like I did. And I'm not a big shot. I'm wrong. When you're wrong, you're wrong. You say it, and you really make a real tshuva, regret inside, and you make a change. And with that, I have another question for you. I want to continue now. Would you consider mending the relationship as you are perceived, which perception is reality, right? As someone who, opposes on some level Chabad, not misnagid. We discussed that. And would you consider saying on this program that you would if you would rewrite this last article in a different way that does not come across as, what's the word you, condescending, and what's the other word you used? Cynical. Thank you. Yes. So my question is, Alan, would you, and I want everyone to hear this, would you consider that? Yes or no?
What are you asking me specifically? Would I renounce the article and rewrite it?
If you could give it a chance to rewrite it and to have it reprinted, would you rewrite it in a way that doesn't come out cynical?
No, what I would take out was the, I mean, because that's my tone. I mean, everyone who knows me, it's part of my sense of humor. I'm cynical about myself. I have a very cynical, dry, caustic sense of humor. I've been that way my whole life. So it's like asking me to change my personality and my style of writing. I don't want to talk about myself and my writings, but anyone who's read, one of the things I write a lot, I just had one that just yesterday came out in the Jewish Review of Books, a review of Noah Feldman, Professor Noah Feldman's new book about Judaism. There are notes, always notes of humorous cynicism. I mean it humorously. Obviously, when I say they look like loonies, even back then, my father laughed. He knew me. He knows his son. Yeah, and he immediately said, "Yeah, but they're very nice people." So I want to seize on that. In answer to your question, am I willing to say, if I had to rewrite the article, I would take out as I said in part one, I would definitely take out the article slogan. I should have said something like his teaching, his motto, what he told me. To say to someone you should be a dugma chaya, it sounded rote. It sounded like something that, people have asked me, so what bothered you so much? It didn't bother me that much. I just wasn't turned on, and I walked away as I wrote in the article, and it no longer interested me. I said, I realized Chabad wasn't for me. Chabad isn't for everybody. There's 13 million Jews, Kein Yirbu in the world, and the vast majority of them are not Chabadniks. Now, I would change that word and maybe something else if given an opportunity, but I don't think the article should be changed, or it's published, it's out there, and what's the Maida Hava Hava? It's done. What I would want to say is that I would welcome Chabad saying, reaching out to me and saying, listen, this was an unfortunate episode. And don't be a stranger. Let me, since you asked me, about Chabad hater, a Rebbe hater. Look, the day after that article appeared, I was at the Jewish funeral home in Montreal, not for a funeral, but to meet one of the directors of the funeral home. And I'm walking out. It's called Paperman's. It's the funeral home Jewish funeral home in Montreal. I'm walking out of there, and I see this very nice-looking Jew with a hadras panim, beautifully dressed, and he looked vaguely familiar. But I'd been away from Montreal for over 30 years, and we started chatting in the lobby, and we both walked out together. And he made some comment, and I said, you talk like a Chabadnik. Only a Chabadnik would use that expression. So he said, he was surprised. He used a certain Hebrew. I switched right away to Yiddish, which I always do, and he answered in English. But then he used a word, and it was a Chabad. That's the kind. So I said, "Oh, you must be a Chabadnik." He says, "Oh, who are you? Excuse me, what's your name?" So I said, "Alan Nadler." He said, "Oh my God, Alan! I thought you were in New York." It was a rabbi by the name of Rabbi Moshe Nu.
I know him.
Yes, everyone knows him in the Montreal Jewish community. He's a very choshev rabbi. And we had a beautiful chat. Nothing about the death threat. Maybe he hadn't heard about it yet. I had just heard about it the day before. And as we were talking, another guy comes along, a Lubavitcher, who's was a chazan in my friend Rabbi Pupko's shul. He's a well-known Chabad. He's retired as a chazan, a well-known Chabad chazan.
Moshe Shore?
Moshe Shore. So there's the three of us standing in the parking lot of a Jewish funeral home, me, Moshe Shore, and Rabbi Moshe Nu, and we're having this beautiful, wonderful conversation. And Moshe Shore likes to rib me and give me because to him I'm a misnagid. These are people. I mean, Moshe Shore, I love the guy. He's a riot. He's got a great sense of humor. He's an independent spirit. He's a good chazan too. And for me to say someone's a good chazan, that's a whole other story. It's big. That's high praise. Lovely people. So I mean, that's the nice thing about smaller communities. In New York, everything is so intense. We're all Jews here, up the street from where I live, literally a block away from where I live. There's the rabbi. He bought a beautiful home, a nicer home than the Rebbe ever lived in. That's for sure. He's living. Is the rabbi who's the head of Chabad Westmount, right? He's my neighbor. I see him all. He sees me walking my dog all the time. They used to have the sukkah Chabad sukkah on the rooftop of the apartment building where I live. It's a rental building, and they used to build a sukkah on top because the owners of the building are Orthodox Jews, and they're very. His assistant used to live in my building. We're all neighbors. We're all friends. We can argue. We can laugh. The last time I saw this particular rabbi, I was walking my dog past his house, and it was Lag Boimer. And there were a bunch of people standing outside, and they were drinking vodka, and they had, he has a big patio there on the street. I walked by, I stopped. They offered me a l'chaim. I said shahakol, and they were, these were not. I didn't see the rabbi, but I mean, he said, "Here, have a drink." They had join us for a drink because I said, "Good yontiv, happy Lag Boimer," and said, "Oh, how do you know it's Lag Boimer?" I was walking a dog like a shagus with a baseball cap. So I said, I took the drink. I said, Baruch Hashem shakol ni abidvaroi. They said, "Oh, you know your stuff," because these are people who are not from, and people in Westmount who are going to Chabad, and they're the rabbi's bringing them in. So his name is Yossi Shane. Yossi Shane. I don't know. I'm blocking that. I'm having a senior moment, a Biden moment. Anyway, Rabbi Yossi, I call him. So anyway, he's the head of Chabad in Westmount. So I mean, this is the way it should be. This is normal.
Yossi Silverstein.
No, not Silverstein. Yossi Shane.
Shanowitz.
Yossi Shanowitz. Yeah, Yossi Shanowitz. Rabbi Yossi Shanowitz.
My cousins are all from the Dolphins. They're all my cousins from Montreal.
I know. The Dolphins. Everyone knows the Dolphins. There's a Dolphin building right across the street, but they spell it with an E, not an I.
They're all my cousins. I don't know.
Seth Dalfin. By the way, Seth Dalfin was the president of a shul where I was the rabbi temporarily. Bethel, where Rabbi Kahana. So he was the president of my shul. So I know the Dolphins. We're all mishpachah.
Yeah,
so Chaim Dolfin. Here's an example. Oh yeah, the Dolphins. Yeah. I mean, that's normal. That's the way it should be. That I disagree with Chabad, that doesn't get in their way. They don't hate. I don't think they hate me. I certainly don't hate them. When I see them, sometimes I'm walking to the Shara Shemaim, which is literally a block away from where he lives.
But Alan, then it's a PR issue. And I'm talking to you, Jew to Jew, heart to heart. There is this perception that Alan. This is the perception in Chabad, especially by the shluchim, that Alan Nadler hates us. He humiliates us, and so let's change the PR.
Okay, I hate. I mean, it's ridiculous. I don't agree with you. I'm never going to agree.
But somehow, Alan,
is there room in? Let me just ask you. Let me ask you a question. I know it's your show, but is there room in Chabad for other Orthodox Jews and for other rabbis to dissent without being called haters?
Absolutely.
Is there room?
Absolutely.
Is there really?
Yes, absolutely.
I wish that were true, but I'm not talking about me now. I'm talking about the way they talk about other much greater rabbis than I will ever imagine to be. The way they used to speak about Rav Shach.
Listen. I wrote a book, probably you don't know this, called Panovich and Lubavitch. Panovich and Chabad.
No, I don't know it.
Yeah, I wrote about Lakewood and Chabad, Mir and Chabad, Torah B'das and Chabad, in Berlin. I covered them all. I covered Hasidim too. I wrote 25 volumes on all the groups. And I studied Rav Shach. I interviewed people from the inside. And yeah, there's been some Lubavitchers, the ones that the likes of such that, made those comments, and others that will want to, chew my head off. Who cares?
Well,
now, one second.
I care if I'm on the receiving end. I care because
one second now. But the fact is that the perception of what Rav Shach said, it looks very bad. Okay, it feels very bad. The timing was wrong from our perspective. So there's a PR breakdown, and I think it's the same thing with you, Alan. I really do. I'm talking to you.
Fair enough. But I mean, I can't control. You said earlier, perception is reality. Well, that's certainly not the point of view of Shar HaYichud Ve'emunah. Perception is the opposite of you. You should know better as a chassid. Do I have to start teaching you, Tanya? I mean, perception is not reality. What we perceive, mitzidenu, is not mitzidei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? You know what I'm talking about exactly.
Absolutely.
What we perceive is false. So let's talk Hasidus here, insider talk, right? Baseball talk. Perception shouldn't be reality. So how people perceive me, I can't control that, but they should know better. Especially Hasidim who study Tanya should know, maybe we're perceiving things incorrectly. That's the whole point of the interpretation of Tzimtzum as not kipshutoi, right? That God didn't withdraw.
Very good. Yeah.
I'm the most dangerous kind of enemy of Chabad, if you think I'm an enemy, because I happen to know a little bit.
Alan, I'm just curious for a minute. Yeah. Do you agree with Tzimtzum Kipshutai or Tzimtzum Shalai Kipshutai? You have a different term.
Neither. I think it's all nonsense. It's Luriana Kabbalah. I don't know. It's Tzimtzum. What Tzimtzum? That's Tzimtzum. No, I don't. No, I'm not a Kabbalist. I'm not into Kabbalah. I mean, I've studied it. Obviously, we're talking Kabbalah here, but I'm fascinated by it. But I'm not a Chassid and I'm not a Kabbalist. I'm not a Mekubal. Okay. I'm a Maimonidean, but in the way that Maimonides isn't turned into a Makubal, which Chabad also tries to do.
Okay, I got it. So let's go back. So the answer to my question is that you don't feel that it's important for the image of yourself and the future to come out with some more positive things towards Chabad, for them to see that, you're a bunch of fun and you're very bright and colorful and all that.
Well, what do you want me to do? Say the Rebbes, I mean, Chabad doesn't need me. I mean, they keep saying they've reached more Jews in the world than anyone else. The subtitle of your book was...
But you see, Alan,
what do you mean?
See, you're asking me... One sec, that statement you just said, Chabad says, that's a cynical remark that really bothers the Chabad Shluchim.
But it's true. You have reached all these people in the world. What was cynical about that? I just said, you say you reached every Jew in the world. So you need me to advertise for you? I don't understand what you're asking. You're asking me to come out and praise Chabad to counter an impression that people have, a perception, which is a mistaken perception. I've said it's a mistaken perception. Right. I just told the story. I love hanging around with Chabad Hasidim. What do you want me to say? Do I agree? I don't agree.
No. Why not write an article at some point, sooner than later, in which you enumerate the strengths of Chabad, what they bring today to Judaism?
I'll tell you what, when Chabad writes an article praising Rabbi Shach, I'll praise Chabad. I mean, come on, this is childish. It's childish. You're asking me to write an article to appease people who have been whose rhetoric against me has been violent. Listen, I'm not a pen for hire, right? I'm not a ghost writer. I'm not going to write. I write what motivates me. Marc Asnin said something very interesting. There was this program with Zev Brenner Saturday night. You probably heard about it.
I listened to that.
So I want to quote Marc here because he said something, and I was thinking the exact same thing. Some woman calls and said, "Why did you have to include that article by Nadler? There should have been only good things. Only good things. You should be spreading only good things." And Marc said, "That's not my job. I'm a photojournalist. I'm a photo, which is what he is. I'm an artist, and I write. I take pictures. I'm inspired. Whatever, And the same thing with writers. All artists." We write what we're inspired, what the muse, if you will, So when you write a book, this is interesting. You wrote a book of Rabbi Zalman Schachter. A lot of Chabadniks weren't happy with that, I'm sure. Because he was a Shona of Piresh, right? He was part of Chabad, and then, he started doing psychedelic drugs on Shabbos, and so he instead of just getting smashed on vodka, as if there's a big difference. Well, okay, that's all. But no, I'm not going to sit down and write an article that I'm not internally motivated to write. What I'm willing to say publicly, and I've said it here, is I like Chabad Hasidim. I get along with this. There's nothing personal here. I didn't hate the Rebbe. I never meant to suggest that the Rebbe was a fraud. I mean, and that was, I'll repeat what I said already. I used the word that was not appropriate, calling something a slogan. So sometimes we use the wrong word when we write, when we speak, and that I retract. But I'm not going to, let's not be kindergarten here. I'm not going to sit down and write an article about the wondrous world of Chabad. It's not going to happen. It shouldn't be necessary. My point is, it shouldn't be necessary.
I got it, and the listeners got it. Now, here's another thing. You come to the Rebbe at 16 years old. Like, what were you thinking and expecting the Rebbe to say to a 16-year-old?
I had no expectation. I didn't know what he was going to say, but I'll tell you
So why were you disappointed?
Because the expectations, you use the word expecting. The expectations, whatever expectations I had been drummed into me over a Shabbos that I spent there. They were telling me, when you see him, you will see the Shekhinah. When he looks at you, now a senior Chabad rabbi said to me, you use the word expect. My expectations were formed, I was 16, right? By rabbis with long white beards who were telling me, when you go in to see the Rebbe, you should know something. When he's sitting with you in a Yechidus, these are their words, and others have heard it, you're the only person in the world at that moment to him. There's no one else there. It's just you and him. So I was expecting him to say, and he can see right into your soul. Someone gave me this notion that there's a neshama klolis, a nefesh shel kol Yisrael. The Rebbe encompasses, so it'll be soul to soul, heart to heart, and that didn't happen. So that was the expectation. It was an expectation that the Chabadniks implanted in me. I was going to see a man. I was going to see the Shekhinah. So of course I was disappointed. Your fault. The hype was too much. Next time, aim lower. I'm brutally honest.
Now let me ask you. Could it have? I understand. Good answer. Could it have been that you were already influenced at the time by Rabbi Baron and others?
I didn't even know him. I started learning with him a year later. 2 years later.
Okay.
No. On the contrary, I was under the influence of Belzer Hasidim, and I was exploring. I didn't go to New York as a misnagid. Again, that's your first question in the last section. No. I was someone who was very passionate. I wasn't about tshuva. I was raised modern Orthodox in a Mizrahi, a Zionist, modern Orthodox family, and I still identify with that old enlightened form of liberal religious Zionism, at least ideologically. No, I was looking for something more than my modern Orthodox school. I was learning in a modern Orthodox yeshiva high school. It was Ivrit B'Ivrit. It was a Zionist school. We studied all kinds of things. And I was looking for something more. Your average kid, I was in Bnei Akiva, right? The Zionist religious youth.
Right.
When the average kid in Bnei Akiva isn't running on Friday to go to the Belzer mikveh. That was me. I was a weirdo, right? I was in Bnei Akiva, but I was looking for something more intense. I also had very intense interactions with Satmar Hasidim, neighbors of mine, the owner of the bakery near where I lived. I got my first job, before I was a mashgiach, delivering chickens for Rabbi Moskow, who was a Satmar Shoichet, and I would throw chickens on the front door. We'd drive around Thursday night delivering Shabbos chickens. So I met with them, and I was interested in Satmar. Satmar, they made a mistake because when I said my father was the chairman of the Mizrahi of Montreal, they said, Dein Tata is a Rasha, your father's an evildoer. So that was the end of Satmar for me. Not my interest, because then I studied the Rebbes teachings by El Moshe, and I wrote articles about the Satmar Rov. So there's no hatred of Hasidim. Again, I mean, it's Narishkeit, it's all Narishkeit. I didn't go with an agenda. I was 16. Okay. I was hoping to get turned on. I wasn't turned on.
Okay. Another question.
What's the big deal?
Right. Okay. In those years, and as you got a little older, did you ever sit at a Farbrengen with Hasidim for 2-3 hours?
I
No,
sat
no,
at
not with the Rebbe, with Hasidim.
with Chabad Hasidim. No, never, no.
Never.
I did go to Tishon. I went to, around that same time when I was about 16, I went to the Vishnitzer Rebbe from Haifa came to Montreal. Back then there was only 2, now there are 3 Vishnitzer Rebbe. So the Vishnitzer Rebbe came to Montreal, and it was happening in my high school auditorium, because the Chabad, the Vishnitzers back then didn't even have a real shul. Now they have 3 shuls for each of the Rebbes in Montreal. So I went to see the Vishnitzer Rebbe, and I'll tell you something, I wasn't impressed with him either. It was worse because they turned over the table. They were bringing him fish, the Rebbe, on a silver plate. You asked me if I forget. I did not go to Farbrengens, but I want to say, since you opened that issue, I went to see other Rebbes. And what happened at Vishnitz was a big turnoff for a different reason. They were bringing the Vishnitzer Rebbe his fish, big piece on a long, and they were not climbing on the table. That only happens in Chabad, where you climb on the table. But they were climbing, and the Hasidim were clamoring to get the Shirayim from the Rebbe. The Rebbe had a little bit, and they started, and the fish overturned, fell on the schmutzige floor where I used to play floor hockey. It's Canada. It was a schmutzig store. Our bubblegum remnants were there, and God knows, before COVID. And the Hasidim all started diving and fighting on the floor, grabbing the fish from the floor and shoving it in their mouths, Shirayim, So I said, oh, that's it. Visions is not for me. I went to a lot of Tish, and I went to the Belzer Rebbe's Tish when I started going to Eretz Yisrael. There was only one Rebbe, a Hasidic Rebbe, who I found to be extremely impressive in the vort he gave at a Shalashidis in Yerushalayim, Shalashidis, and that was the Slonim Rebbe, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha. The Slonim Rebbe, Rabbi Weinberg, the last of the Weinbergs, who was Slonim Rebbe. Now it's Barzovsky, because the Rebbe's direct heirs are no longer Rebbe. But I mean, the Slonim Rebbe, and it was a year before he died. And then I went to the Saturday night Melava Malka, and he gave a speech in Yiddish, but on a Litvish Yiddish, because they're Litvish Hasidim from Slonim, from Belarus, not far from Chabad, all neighbors in there. And the Slonim Rebbe said something that I found so profound and so moving. And I was also moved by the way the Slonim Hasidim comported themselves. They all dressed beautifully. They shined their shoes. They're Litvaks. They reminded me of Rabbi Moshe Nu, who always has a perfect suit on. He must have a private tailor anyway, but I digress. Anyway, so these guys, I was very impressed with the Slonim Hasidim. I was very impressed with the fact that they were speaking both Yiddish and Ivrit, the whole thing. So I asked if I could see the Slonim Rebbe, and I got to see him Monday morning in Eretz Yisrael, and I went to see him privately. And that audience, that's the only audience I had with a Hasidic Rebbe, other than the Lubavitch Rebbe and the Belzer Rebbe. The current Belzer Rebbe, when he was a very young man, came to Montreal, and I had an audience with him. I also was not impressed with the Belzer Rebbe, if it makes you feel any better. So maybe I just don't have the gene to get turned on by Hasidic Rebbes, but not true, because the Slonim Rebbe, when he spoke with me, he asked me about myself. He just wanted to know who I am and what I am and why I'm there and what brought me to Slonim and how I found him. Then he said, he gave me a bracha which spoke directly to what I was going through at the time. I was going through we all do, some extreme emotional distress. And he picked up on that and he said, I know you're in distress. And I know you're in a lot of pain right now, emotional pain. He didn't ask me what it was about. He even said, I think it's nicht mein Geschäft. Your business is your business, but I want you to know it'll not, he didn't just say it will get better. He said something to me, very personal, I don't want to share it, that I remember thinking, wow, this guy, that's now how the Lubavitcher Rebbe, no one in the world is immune to spirituality. So it's not as if I'm, and if they do, they're just in denial. They're in denial. They're just missing something. There's something missing in their lives. Now, the Slonim Rebbe, he got to me. And that began a fascination. I'll send you the article of my doing research into Slonim Hasidus, because there's nothing, even today, not a single book, a critical academic book analyzing the Hasidus of Slonim, which, as you know, finally, for Chabadniks listening to you, and I'm sure most of your listeners are Chabad, the Slonim Rebbe, they trace their descent from Avram of Kalisk, the Kalisker, Avram of Kalisk, and straight down, right? So there's the generations.
They go back to the Lechovitch, and Lechovitch was a Talmud of Rabbi Abraham Kalisker, right?
Exactly. It was Kalis, Lechovitch, Slonim, right?
Correct.
And so this, so the Slon, the Kalisker, Reb Avram of Kalisk, and Reb Shneir Zalman of Ladi had a fierce dispute, and he condemned the Tanya, the publication of the Tanya, because he said this is not, he's spreading Hasidus to the masses, and he shouldn't do that, right? And correct. He said it's right. He believed everything should be simple. We shouldn't be teaching the Sodos HaTorah to the masses. We should keep it. Everything has to be modest, and we have to be. And there was a dispute about money. It got really ugly, right? A dispute. This was one of the great. It was uglier than the dispute between the Balatanya and the Vilna Gaon, because it went on and on and on. The Balatanya came to see the Vilna Gaon. He said, he basically closed the doors, closed the windows, said, I don't want to even talk to him. But the Slonimer and the Kalisker, so I'm just saying, the Slonimer Rebbe, maybe that's just who I am. Maybe that's my Pintel Yid.
Okay, but you didn't become a Slonimer Chassid.
No, I didn't become a Slonimer Chassid. I'm not going to become a Chassid. I am who I am. But I was very touched and very moved by him. I don't think he wanted. No,
but that's my question, Alan. Okay. Why didn't you become a Slonimer Chassid if you were so moved?
Well, first of all, unlike Chabad, they weren't missionizing me. There were no strings attached. They weren't trying to get me in. You guys are the missionaries. And I say that's you're evangelical. You're out there. That's what Chabad is all about from the beginning, by the way. There's a wonderful book by Naftali Lowenthal about this, spreading the word. Spreading the word was always Chabad, out to the world, right? So, I mean, by the way, Naftali Lowenthal were classmates at Harvard Graduate School. We both studied with Rabbi Yitzchak Twersky, the Tolner Rebbe. That's another story, but I was a student of the Tolner Rebbe, who was a professor at Harvard, Rabbi Yitzchak Twersky, who I'm sure you know of him, the Maimonides scholar, and my
let me ask you, just because time is running out. Did you know? Yeah, sure. Did you know Rabbi Soloveitchik, Rabbi Yasher Ber Soloveitchik? Did you have a connection with him?
Listen, Rabbi Soloveitchik, I used to go to his shiurim. He used to give shiurim when I was in Boston. You know, right. I entered Harvard Graduate School in 1976, and Rabbi Soloveitchik, he was still in good mental health, although there was the beginning of Parkinson's even back then. But he gave a shiur. A Gemara shiur on Saturday night and Sunday a shiur.
And what did you think? And what did you think?
Oh, what did I think? Mind-bogglingly brilliant. Mind-bogglingly brilliant. And I became very friendly with his son, Rabbi Chaim Soloveitchik, who's a scholar of Jewish history, and we used to have Thanksgiving dinner together. But the Rabbi Yasher Ber blew me away. I mean, I was 22 years old, but I was still very young. And I was very impressed. I mean, obviously, who could not be? He was a Gadol Hador, and but I had no relationship with him. I had a relationship with Rabbi Twersky, his son-in-law, Rabbi Yasher Ber's son-in-law, who was also the Tolner Rebbe's son and became the Tolner Rebbe later on. And so, I mean, for me to say I'm hostile to Hasidim, my Zeta was a Tolner Chassid. He left and he became a communist. Oy Aleinu. On my mother's side. On my father's side, it was Chabad. On my mother's side, he was from Uman de Bova, and Uman was all Tolner Hasidim. The Bratzlavers would come on Rosh Hashanah. My Zayda said we used to throw rocks at them. The Tolner, Reb David of Tolner told them you have to stone them. Stone the so you don't have a monopoly on religious violence. You know, they used to. So anyway,
Alan, so no. We do have to conclude now, but sure. I do want to say there's a final that I invite you, you and I and a few other good Lubavitcher serious guys to have a good Hasidic upbringing and to take a little l'chaim and to talk our hearts out together and we're all Yidden. I really, you know, it'd be good for me. I've enjoyed. This has been tremendous. So I want to continue some other time. And it's Hashem more. Because I have a lot more to discuss with you, and you
may regret this because next time I come to New York, I have family in New York. I have a sister who lives in New York, and when I visit them, I'm going to give you a call.
Okay.
But you'll have to ensure my personal protection if I come out to Crown Heights.
I will.